Welcome to the Death Zone, the place for true stories of war, treacherous seas, and life and death moments that have shaken the world. If you appreciate authentic yet humane historical archives, please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. And now, we invite you to step into today's file. Aris 13, the fuel tanker attacked by Somali pirates, marking a return after 5 years of deceptive calm. That night, on the large screens of the command center off the Gulf of Aden, bright dots representing dozens of merchant vessels were silently drifting. Everything seemed normal, until a different signal appeared. A small fuel tanker, named Aris 13, suddenly changed course. Instead of sticking to the safe shipping lane far offshore, it began drifting slowly toward the rugged, rocky coast of Somalia. At that same moment, the communication channel crackled with the tense voice of a crew member. "We are being approached by small skiffs, requesting urgent assistance." Then, the signal abruptly went silent. On the electronic chart, Aris 13's path veered sharply, as if a hand had seized the wheel, dragging the vessel out of the safe lane and steering it straight toward a coastline that was once a notorious pirate den. Across the ocean, international news agencies received the alert. A fuel tanker was suspected to have been hijacked off the coast of Somalia. A shiver ran through the world, not just for the danger facing the 8 souls on board, but because of a far more chilling reality. This could be the first hijacking of a merchant vessel by Somali pirates since 2012. 5 years of quiet seas. It seemed the nightmare had ended. But in just a few hours, the name Aris 13 forced the world to look back at the stretch of coast that everyone wanted to forget. To truly grasp why the Aris 13 quickly became the focal point of global attention, we must step back and look at the waters the ship was drifting through that fateful night. For years, the Gulf of Aden and the waters off Somalia were a haunting nightmare for the maritime industry. Cargo ships, oil tankers, and massive container vessels were intercepted in the middle of the ocean. Crews were held hostage for days, sometimes weeks, while shipping companies were forced to pay exorbitant insurance premiums just to traverse a narrow strip of water on the map. People called this place a black spot, where a few small skiffs were enough to shake the stability of an entire international shipping lane. The world could not stand by forever. Warships from multiple nations arrived to patrol. Armed helicopters hovered over the waves, and safety corridors were clearly demarcated. Along with this came a strict set of rules for commercial vessels. Stay far offshore, maintain high speeds, report positions frequently, harden the decks with razor wire, install water cannons, and, if possible, hire private armed security teams. These measures gradually took effect. The number of attacks plummeted year after year. Eventually, international reports recorded 0 successful hijackings of commercial vessels off the coast of Somalia. Many began to believe that the golden age of Somali piracy had ended, and these waters were finally returning to normal. At that time, on paper, the Aris 13 was just a small name among thousands of ships passing through annually. It was a small bunkering tanker with a low-freeboard, specialized in ferrying fuel to supply ports and other vessels in the region. On board that day were 8 Sri Lankan sailors, men accustomed to a life adrift, spending weeks away from home to send money back to their families. In their eyes, that night's voyage was completely routine. Departing from the port of Djibouti, the Aris 13 was ordered to transport fuel to Mogadishu. The journey was not overly long. The route had been traveled many times before. It was just another trip to mark in the logbook before returning home. On the map, the safest path was to stick to the offshore corridor recommended by maritime organizations. However, like many other small vessels, the Aris 13 chose a shorter route, cutting closer to the shore, hugging the waters off Puntland, a semi-autonomous region on the Somali coast. Going close to shore meant saving fuel and cutting down travel time. Previous trips had passed peacefully, So this shortcut gradually became the norm. The sea remained the same. The waves remained the same. And shifts changed hands as usual. No one on deck thought that simply choosing a different line on the map could alter their entire destiny. But the coastline they were passing was not just rock and sand. It was home to impoverished fishing villages, small armed factions, and former pirates now struggling to survive on a barren strip of land. Years without a major ship hijacking did not mean that the speedboats, the networks, and the experience had vanished. They were simply quieter, more hidden, waiting for prey that was easy enough, close enough, and careless enough. A fuel tanker hugging the coast, sitting low in the water, lacking armed guards, flying the flag of a small nation, with 8 sailors believing this was just another ordinary day. On the radar screens of monitoring centers that evening, the Aris 13 was merely a slow-moving signal among countless others. But to the eyes watching from the arid sands of Puntland, it looked like a target within reach, clearly visible, and most importantly, it appeared fatally unprotected. As the Aris 13 continued to trace the coastline of Puntland under the cover of darkness, no one on deck realized that from the distance, other eyes were already tracking every single movement of the ship. To the crew, this was just another night shift, with yellow lights casting shadows on the deck and the steady hum of the engine deep within the hull. But out on the pitch-black sea, small skiffs were preparing to start their engines. Offshore, launched from a wooden mothership lying silent like a dark shadow on the water, 2 speedboats were gradually lowered. Figures moved quickly, checking engines, checking grappling hooks, before letting the motors roar to life, shattering the silence of the night. They knew this route perfectly, knew where international patrols drifted, and understood that a low-freeboard target hugging the shore like the Aris 13 would struggle to receive immediate support. Inside the bridge of the Aris 13, the radar swept its steady green circle across the screen. Blips represented other ships, the coast, and buoys. Over the radio, the voices of the watchkeepers mingled with the rhythmic sound of waves. Perhaps, in a fleeting moment, someone spotted unusual small signals on the screen, or a faint streak of foam beyond the glass. But in countless peaceful night watches before, such signals were simply dismissed as local fishing boats. The distance on the sea closed rapidly as one side aggressively accelerated. 2 skiffs split to approach from both sides, squeezing toward the ship's hull. From the deck, the sound of approaching engines grew louder, merging with the wind and the ship's own machinery. Suspicion turned to alarm as sailors moved to the railings to peer into the dark water. When the skiffs pulled right alongside, doubt instantly turned into a warning. Calls rang out across the deck, doors were slammed shut, and every lock that could be secured from the inside was engaged. The distress signal went out. The captain reported unidentified skiffs approaching at high speed, requesting urgent assistance and guidance. Far away, monitoring centers and warships recorded the report, tracking the Aris 13's path on their screens. But time on the ocean waits for no one. While information was being relayed, the situation on deck changed faster than any communication channel could keep up. The skiffs pulled alongside, finding the best spot to latch on. The sea was calm enough, the conditions perfect for the boarders to execute the plan they had prepared. From the waterline, figures scrambled up the hull, reaching the deck, utilizing every foothold, every rope, every ladder they could grasp. Orders flew across the Aris 13. Retreat deeper inside. Stay calm. Do not resist. The crew was not equipped for direct confrontation. Their duty was self-preservation, maintaining contact for as long as possible, and waiting for professional intervention. This was the standard protocol for cargo ships in these waters. But in reality, everything unfolded in a matter of minutes. Strangers on deck, footsteps rushing down corridors, banging on doors, shouting in a language the sailors could barely understand. It all coalesced into a wave of tension sweeping through the ship. Communication channels were severed, and the final words on the radio were swallowed by chaotic noise. Then, the Aris 13 ceased answering calls. On remote tracking screens, observers could only see a simple, chilling truth. The ship had changed course. Instead of heading south to Mogadishu, it was forced to turn its bow toward the Puntland coast. Speed dropped, stabilizing enough for small boats or wooden vessels to escort it. To remote monitors, the signs were unmistakable. A merchant vessel making an erratic turn, hugging the shore, unresponsive to calls after reporting a pursuit. It all painted a clear picture before any official statement was made. The Aris 13 was no longer under the crew's control. Meanwhile, on board, 8 Sri Lankan men were rounded up into a confined area where they could be easily watched, ordered to sit in silence under dim lights. They tried to decipher their fate through fragmented dialogue and footsteps outside. Fear was palpable, but so was the instinct to remain calm to avoid making the situation worse. The hijackers had a specific goal. They didn't want to stay at sea. They wanted to bring the Aris 13 to the shore, to a place where the terrain and community offered them a greater advantage. As it moved toward the shore, the fuel tanker sailed slowly, as if on a routine diversion. But every nautical mile it moved closer to the rocky shores of Puntland was a mile further from the reach of international rapid response forces. The gap between the Aris 13 and safety widened, not just on the map, but in the feeling of helplessness for those watching from afar. Finally, the ship anchored near the coastal town of Alula, a name familiar to maritime security analysts. From above, one would see a lonely tanker near the shore, surrounded by wooden boats ferrying back and forth, with dirt paths leading from the village into the desolate hills. For the locals, a foreign ship this close was impossible to ignore. Word spread from village to village. A fuel tanker had been seized, with foreign sailors awaiting their fate. To the outside world, this was a shock. After years of silence, a merchant vessel had truly been hijacked off Somalia. But for those on the Aris 13, the reality was far more visceral, where every sound on the deck signaled that their story had just entered a new chapter, far more unpredictable than any voyage they had ever endured. As the Aris 13 lay silent near the coast of Alula, the atmosphere on board felt compressed, heavy with unspoken dread. Day and night blurred into one another, distinguished only by the shifting hues of light filtering through the small window where 8 Sri Lankan men sat waiting. They had no way of knowing what was being prepared for them on the outside. But far away, names like Aris, 13, Puntland, and Somalia had begun to dominate news screens across the globe. In Colombo, the capital of Sri Lanka, the sailors' families received brief, agonizing calls, informing them that their loved ones were on a ship suspected to be under pirate control. Mothers, wives, and small children could only ask the same question over and over. Are they safe? While the messengers themselves had no complete answer to give. The Sri Lankan government quickly reached out to the ship owner, international organizations, and local authorities in Somalia, desperately trying to reattach the fragile lines of communication to the vessel held captive offshore. On a broader scale, maritime organizations and international naval forces could not hide their concern. After years of witnessing a sharp decline in attacks, they had always hoped that Somali piracy was merely a name in old case files. The Aris 13 incident served as a startling signal. If a small fuel tanker could be seized so easily, was the door opening for a new wave of chaos? But it wasn't just the outside world that felt challenged. Right on the shores of Puntland, those responsible for this land realized that the fate of the Aris 13 was not just a story between pirates and a foreign ship. If the standoff dragged on, if ransom flowed into the hands of armed groups, if notoriety spread across the world again, the fragile image and stability of Puntland itself would be dragged back into the chaotic years of the past. Puntland's maritime security forces were immediately deployed. From small coastal barracks, patrol boats were pushed into the water, moving out toward the anchorage area. On shore, pickup trucks carrying armed forces raced along dirt roads, seizing high ground overlooking the small bay where the Aris 13 lay. They wanted to send a clear message. That ship could not become a long-term base for any armed group. In the days that followed, a tightening noose formed around the Aris 13. Puntland patrol boats did not attack directly, but they always appeared at a distance, just close enough to remind the hijackers that someone was watching. Those holding the ship understood that if they tried to turn the incident into a major armed confrontation, they would face not only the reaction of local authorities but also the scrutiny of multiple forces beyond the region. Instead of immediately resorting to force, another path was opened. The path of negotiation. In Somalia, coastal communities are often still heavily influenced by clan elders, village chiefs, and community leaders. The Puntland administration knew this well, and they invited respected figures in the region to step in as a bridge between those holding the ship and the rest of the outside world. These meetings did not take place at luxurious conference tables, but in simple rooms, on dirt floors or old wooden chairs. There, they discussed the consequences if the situation was pushed too far, the risks of confronting security forces, and the price local people would have to pay if these waters were once again branded as a hotspot for maritime crime. These arguments might not have changed every calculation, but they were enough to create a new pressure weighing on those holding the ship. While the hands of clan elders tried to pull the story back from the brink, the eyes on board the Aris 13 still looked at each other with intense anxiety. The crew could hear the sound of skiffs speeding back and forth, sometimes distant shouting from the shore, sometimes silences filled only by the sound of waves lapping against the hull. With each passing day, they asked themselves, is today the day everything gets resolved, or will it be the day the story takes a more dangerous turn? At a safe distance offshore, international warships maintained contact with local authorities, tracking every development. They knew that an armed assault on a fuel-laden ship, situated near the shore and near populated areas, would be fraught with risk. Any mistake could cause damage, not only to the sailors, but also to the people living along that coast. Therefore, despite having the capability to intervene, they had to calculate very carefully, placing their trust in the cordon on the shore and the negotiation efforts taking place. Time seemed to stretch endlessly when one could only wait. But at a certain point, the strings of tension began to loosen. Sources from the shore reported that the group holding the ship was under immense pressure, from the Puntland forces' blockade, from the risk of clashing with other armed groups, and from the advice of those they respected in the community. Then, late one afternoon, several small skiffs quietly departed the area around the Aris 13. Figures that had previously appeared on deck one by one vanished from sight. Puntland security forces watched closely, waiting for the skiffs to retreat toward the shore before approaching the ship left abandoned in the calm water. The moment the first boots of the local forces stepped onto the deck of the Aris 13 was a critical milestone. They did not know for sure what awaited behind those doors. Was anyone still inside? Were there traps? Were the sailors safe? Every door was opened with caution. Every corridor checked. Every engine room, sleeping quarter, and control room swept. Finally, they found the 8 Sri Lankan men waiting in a sealed room. They were exhausted, stressed, but still alive and unharmed. After days of being held on a ship controlled by others, they heard the first words from their rescuers, that the incident was over, that the ship was no longer held, and that they would be taken to safety to return home. That night, the lights on the Aris 13 shone differently than on previous nights. The fuel tanker was escorted by Puntland forces out of the Alula area, returning to deeper waters where warships and support vessels were waiting. The first reports sent out confirmed that no ransom had been paid, no major attack had occurred, but the whole world had once again been forced to utter the words Somali pirates just because a small ship had strayed from the safe path. On deck, as the sea breeze once again blew across the hull on the journey away from the rocky shores of Puntland, The 8 Sri Lankan men could, for the first time, stand and look out at the sea with a different feeling, no longer held captive, but never forgetting that just one shortcut on a map, just one ordinary night like any other, was enough to turn a fuel transport voyage into a mental ordeal they would carry for the rest of their lives. When the first news bulletins regarding the Aris 13 appeared on television screens and international news sites, many breathed a collective sigh of relief. The ship was released. The 8 sailors returned safely. There was no massive assault, and no fiery explosions on the sea surface. On the surface of the story, everything seemed to end more peacefully than the worst-case scenarios people had once feared. But for those in the maritime industry, for maritime security experts, and for those who had lived through the era when Somali piracy was rampant, the Aris 13 was not merely a lucky incident. It served as a slap in the face to the complacency that had formed after years of calm seas. A small ship, flying the flag of a lesser-noticed nation, deviating from the safe route to save costs, was enough to remind the entire world that the risks in these waters had never completely disappeared. The shipping industry was forced to take a hard look at itself. Recommendations that everyone seemed to know by heart, such as staying far offshore, maintaining speed, reporting routes, and enhancing self-protection, turned out not to be always followed. When fuel prices rise, when the pressure to cut costs weighs heavily on every shipment, the temptation of shortcuts on the map becomes clearer. The Aris 13 was just one of the ships that chose that path, but it was the ship that lost its right to self-determination the moment it crossed an invisible line off the coast of Puntland. On the other side, the story of those living along the Somali coast is not simple either. Years of conflict and instability have left coastal communities impoverished, lacking livelihood options, trapped between the vast ocean and the arid land behind them. While the choice of some to attack cargo ships certainly cannot be justified, it also cannot be separated from the broader picture of poverty, weak governance, and fishing grounds overexploited by vessels from elsewhere. What made the Aris 13 story unique was how the incident ended. There was no large-scale military assault, no prolonged standoff between warships and a hijacked vessel offshore. Instead, the cordon of local forces, combined with the negotiation efforts of clan elders and community leaders, forced those holding the ship to retreat. No ransom was paid. No defiant message was sent out. There was only a ship quietly leaving the waters where it had been dragged in. For the 8 Sri Lankan sailors, the memory of the days held on the Aris 13 will likely remain for a very long time. They did not witness the maps and reports. They did not know of all the calls made between capitals and command centers. What they remember is the cramped room, the sound of footsteps on deck, the prolonged moments of silence, and the feeling of waiting with no end in sight. When the ship was escorted back to safe waters, it was not just a journey escaping a dangerous incident, but a journey back to the normal life they once took for granted. To the world, the Aris 13 is a reminder that maritime security is not something achieved once and for all. Just a few wrong decisions on a ship, just a few moments of negligence in a planning room, and an entire system must spend days, even weeks, dealing with the consequences. And amidst all the lines on the map, the figures on cargo and costs, there are always flesh and blood human beings, people who only hope to board the ship, work, and return home safely. If you put yourself in the shoes of the Aris 13 captain, which path on the map would you have chosen that night? Going the long way, burning more fuel but sticking to the safe route, or hugging the shore to shorten the distance, believing that years of calm seas were enough to make everything less dangerous? And looking broader, when standing before the world's still unstable waters,
still for a moment.
Whose responsibility is it more? The shipping companies, the local authorities, or the international community that once promised not to let those waters be forgotten? The story of the Aris 13 closes without loud images, but its echo remains in every report, every security recommendation, and in the memories of those who lived through those days. If you want to continue accompanying us through true dossiers like this, moments of life and death at sea, in the air, and on land. Don't forget to subscribe to the Death Zone channel to join us in opening the next files.